In this video, we are going to look at a simple shift that allows for anxiety to dissolve effortlessly. What we can notice, first of all, is how anxiety manifests in our experience in the first place. So, the sort of symptoms that are there when we are stuck in a kind of persistent anxious mode is that we are experiencing a kind of sense, a feeling of contractedness, of being closed off and shrunken. And there are specific thoughts that come along with that felt sense. So, thoughts like, I can't deal with this is too much, how can I possibly cope, I feel overwhelmed. So our usual way of dealing with these kinds of thoughts and feelings is very often to treat them at a sort of symptom level. That means we are in that anxious mode and we are projecting worst case scenarios into the future, and then we are coping with those anxious thoughts by constructing a sort of counter narrative or imagining how we are going to deal with those situations. We are sort of negotiating with the anxious mind on its own terms. And of course, there can be some use in that. I'm not trying to dismiss that entirely. But in what we're doing here today, we are first going to the root of the problem in a more fundamental way. Because fundamentally, when we are anxious and we are sort of projecting these worst case scenarios, the thing to be curious about first is where we are coming from. As what, as who we are feeling overwhelmed. In other words, from where am I experiencing, from where am I aware when I'm feeling anxious and overwhelmed? And by first being clear about that, being clear about who it is that is feeling overwhelmed, we are really addressing the anxious mind right at its source first, rather than purely fighting against symptoms. Of course, if there is something to do in your life to, let's say, lessen the burden and feel less anxious, of course we should always do that first. Just be pragmatic about it. So make sure you get enough sleep and rest, you drink enough water, you have a healthy diet, all that good stuff. But when that's in place, we can again become curious about what it is or who it is that is experiencing the anxiety. So, how is that sense of anxiety manifesting in our experience in the first place? We're going to work in the here and now with this kind of inquiry. So, if you are feeling yourself to be the anxious one, the one who has to manage and control this emotion, just check in with where you are feeling to be located right now. I am overwhelmed. I am anxious. Okay. Where am I anxious from? Where am I experiencing that anxiety from? What specifically comes back for you here could be a bit different for each and every one of you. Sometimes that location can be felt to be more so in the head, sometimes in the throat or chest area. But again, just familiarize with that felt location where you feel like the center of you is located right now. When you're feeling overwhelmed, where do you feel that in the body? Where is the burdened one? And you might be able to find this sort of dense, contracted feeling, sensation, energy. And as we're familiarizing with that, just allow that to soften a bit. We're opening a bit of space around this overwhelmed center. And we can just do this in a very simple way by first shifting to a panoramic view. So we're not having a pinpoint attention focused in front of us, but we're just opening space, expanding the visual field, and just resting naturally. That anxiety, that dense energy can still be felt, but you might just notice that there's a bit more spaciousness now, a bit more lightness here. We're not looking for 100% relaxation. If there's just 10% more openness, that's great. We take that, we enjoy that, by just being here in this relaxed openness. Now, as we are resting here, we are just curiously asking a question, and we're not trying to resolve this question intellectually. We're just staying in this relaxed, effortless, panoramic openness, and whatever comes, comes. Nothing to force here. So the simple question is, what is aware of this anxiety? What is aware of this pattern of energy? Is it someone who is aware of that? Intuitively, we might say here, yes, I am aware of that. So is that I that is aware findable right now? In other words, the awareness that is experiencing that energy, that anxious pattern, where is it located? Again, not trying to think about the answer, but just staying with this immediacy, just the openness of this, and just lightly presencing, feeling into this awareness which is here right now. You might notice here that awareness is not located in a place, in a particular spot in the body. That anxiety we could locate quite well. It was felt to be somewhere in the body. But the one who is aware, awareness itself, we cannot find a location to it. It is just here, in this utterly simple way, just this presence. Curiously, this openness of awareness is not something that needs to be maintained or held. Right now we can do whatever we want, think whatever we want, move the body however we want, and this awareness is just here, open, regardless. Awareness is sometimes likened to an open sky in this way, because it is unobstructed, just pure awake openness. But it's not like there's an actual space we find as some kind of distinct location. It's more simple than that. Just being is enough. Just being is synonymous with recognizing this effortless, awake awareness that is here right now. Now, the interesting question here is, how does this effortless awareness relate to that anxious pattern? Previously, we might have felt to be located within that anxious pattern in the body. Now we see that I, as awareness, is not located in there. But how is this openness relating to this anxious pattern? And again, don't try to resolve this intellectually. Just be here in this relaxed openness and feel this unfolding of energy of the body, that movement of aliveness. Can we find any dividing line between this open awakeness, this simple being, and that movement of aliveness? The simple answer is no. There is no distinction, no dividing line, no separation between awareness and the aliveness of the body. It is naturally included in an intimacy that is really too close for words. We don't need to figure this out conceptually. Just being here in this simple, unconstructed presence is enough. The body is naturally included in this. So just for a few moments, enjoy this rest in this effortless being that is showing, presenting itself as this movement of aliveness. Now you may notice here as well that right now, what is listening to my words is not an anxious pattern in the body. What is listening right now, what is hearing and receiving right now, is awareness itself. You, as awareness, are hearing my words right now, are seeing my face right now. So fascinatingly, the appreciation of this awareness is not some kind of detached state of being, but it also has the capacity to embody and live in the perspective of the body-mind. So it's more like an operating system than a state. Right now, as you are aware from this awareness, very intentionally allow yourself to raise your right arm, bring it down, and raise your left arm and bring it down. Just see with immediacy that this awake openness is here. And strangely, as this awareness, we are not detached, but also fully embodied and involved. There's intentionality here, but the intentionality doesn't come from a localized center. It's just coming from this awareness, which isn't in a particular location, but it's just here in the most simple way. So it's our centerless center, we could say. So we are seeing right now that all the functioning is there. And if we go back to the beginning, where we were speaking about projecting these worst case scenarios into the future, we now have a very different sense of that. Because interestingly, when we don't feel ourselves to be localized in a small, limited pattern, we also don't continuously project worst case scenarios into the future. That is happening primarily because we feel ourselves to be vulnerable in the here and now. But here, as the simple being, there's safety, there's wholeness. There isn't that neurotic need for self-preservation. So because we are operating out of this basic security and safety, we don't need to battle the symptoms of the anxious mind. If it arises in the here and now, it's already included. If we somehow seem to become identified again with that pattern, and we're worrying about how we are going to cope, we can just tell that pattern from awareness, don't worry, you don't have to do it. You don't have to resolve the situation. Of course you can't, of course it's too much. I do it. It's going to be done from awareness. It's going to happen from this. So we can't project into the future and imagine how awareness is going to resolve a particular situation, because the resolving and the interaction is always happening in the here and now. It's coming from here. We don't need to worry about how we're going to cope, because it's being done from here anyway. How exactly it's going to happen, what it's going to look like, might be a surprise. But at the same time, that's not scary, because we see that in the here and now, this is, for lack of a better word, working. It's feasible to live like that. More than that, it's deeply meaningful and enjoyable to live from this. But as always, don't have any crazy expectations about what I'm sharing here. Take it easy. Most likely, the habit of identifying with that anxious pattern will persist. So we just Take it one step at a time. Start where it's easy. Embody awareness where it's easy first. And gradually we can see that situations where we previously needed to shrink into an anxious manager can actually be dealt with from being itself. So this is not a magic pill. This is a gradual familiarization with this simple being. We enjoy the completeness of this in the here and now, but the embodiment certainly takes time. That shouldn't discourage you, however, because when we are living out of this, the reward is there immediately. It is felt maybe lightly at first, but surely in the long term, you won't be disappointed. So as you're going about your day, familiarizing with awareness and living from it, just know that we are in this together in an absolutely fundamental way.